A millionaire laughed at a black cleaning lady's son in front of a crowd, waving a contract and saying, "Translate this, and my salary's yours." Everyone laughed until the boy opened his mouth. What happened next shut the room down and changed two lives forever. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It all started on a regular Tuesday in a sleek downtown office tower, the kind of day where the elevators hum softly and the scent of roasted coffee drifts through the air from the executive lounge. Janice, a black woman in her early 50s, had just clocked in for her night shift. She was one of those people you never noticed but always depended on. The carpets didn't clean themselves. The trash bins didn't magically empty overnight. The glass windows didn't stay streak-free by chance. That was Janice. She didn't talk much, never drew attention to herself, and always carried the kind of quiet dignity that only people who've been through a lot wear like armor. Her pride and joy, though, was her teenage son, Malik. Malik was 15, tall for his age, quiet like his mother, with eyes that watched everything and a mind that absorbed more than most would guess. That day, Janice had asked her supervisor if Malik could sit in the break room for a couple of hours. His school had ended early, and she didn't want him hanging out on the street. The supervisor, kind enough, said it was fine. So Malik waited. There in the employee lounge, knees curled up in one of the office chairs, reading a paperback book. Most of the staff had gone home. A few late-night employees were still typing away in their cubicles. None of them paid Malik any attention. Not until Edward Langston walked in. Edward Langston, 32 years old, youngest vice president the firm ever had. He came for money, wore it on his wrist in the form of a platinum watch, and carried himself with the entitlement of someone who believed his elevator always went to the top. He spotted Malik right away. A kid in worn sneakers, in a space clearly not meant for him. Edward cocked his head, smirking. "You're Janice's kid, right?" Malik looked up from his book, calm and polite. "Yes, sir." Edward walked closer, hands in his suit pockets. "What are you reading?" Malik held up the book, Le Petit Prince, by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It was in French. Edward blinked, then let out a loud, exaggerated laugh. "You reading that in French? What is this? Google Translate challenge." Malik didn't respond. He didn't need to. Edward wasn't done. He grabbed the book from Malik's hands and flipped to a random page. "All right, little man," he said mockingly. "Translate this paragraph for me, word for word, right now." Malik calmly took the book back and read the paragraph silently. Then, without a stutter, translated it into perfect English. Not just word for word, but with emotion, with meaning, like someone who understood the story, not just the language. Edward's smirk began to fade. Okay, he said, holding up his hands. "Beginner's luck. You memorized that one. Let's try another." He flipped several pages ahead. A longer passage. More complex. "Translate this one," Edward said, half laughing but clearly trying to keep face. Malik did, flawlessly. A pause hung in the air. Edward's eyebrows knit together. His mouth opened as if to say something, but nothing came out. That's when Malik looked up and said quietly, "My mom taught me." Edward blinked. "What? My mom?" "Janice. She speaks 3 languages. French is one of them. She used to teach it before we moved here." That hit like a slap. Janice, the quiet cleaning lady, who moved through the building like a shadow, was trilingual? A former teacher? Edward suddenly felt small. Then Malik added, still polite, still calm. "She helps me study every night. After her shift. That's why I wait here for her. We walk home together." Edward's smug expression vanished entirely. He straightened his tie, muttered something under his breath, and left without another word. Later that evening, as Janice wiped down the glass in the boardroom, the HR director, a kind woman named Ms. Jensen, came up to her. "I heard about what happened with Mr. Langston and your son," she said. "Malik's impressive." Janice smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's a good boy, just trying to make a future." Ms. Jensen hesitated, then said, "Would you be open to tutoring part-time? We have a few executives brushing up on French before an overseas partnership." Janice blinked. "Me?" Ms. Jensen nodded. "Yes, you." That night, when Janice and Malik walked home together, their footsteps were a little lighter, because sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It speaks softly, like a mother teaching her son a foreign language by the kitchen table, and sometimes it speaks loudest when people like Edward realize, too late, who they were really mocking. I didn't know they taught French in broom closets. Edward joked loudly, his voice laced with cruelty. Several heads turned. A few late-working employees in the hallway paused, their curiosity piqued. The laughter that followed wasn't hearty. It was awkward, uncertain. Most people didn't like Edward Langston, but he was the youngest VP in the company. And in offices like this, power often muted morality. Malik, sitting quietly with his book in hand, didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. Edward wasn't satisfied. He thrived on attention, especially when it came at someone else's expense. Eyeing the table behind him, he spotted a thick folder labeled Contract, Marseille JV Merger, Translation Required. It was a 12-page document, entirely in French. He snatched it up and waved it dramatically. "All right, little man," Edward said with a smirk. "Let's make it interesting." He turned to the small audience that had gathered. "You all see this?" he said, holding up the file. "This is a contract our legal team's been sweating over for 3 weeks. French law, international business. Clauses, technical stuff." He turned back to Malik. "You say you can read French, yeah? Okay. Translate this, word for word. Get it right." He leaned down, eyes gleaming with arrogance. "And my salary's yours." There was a beat of silence. Then nervous chuckles. Someone from accounting muttered, "Come on, Ed." But Edward was grinning like a man who thought he'd already won. This was his moment to humiliate a poor kid. A cleaner's kid. Just a teenager, sitting in a company break room, probably dreaming of a life far above his pay grade. But Malik didn't blink. He calmly set his book aside, stood up, and walked over to the file. He opened it, scanned the first few lines silently, then looked up and started to speak, fluent, precise, confident, line by line. He translated every clause, every condition. His voice was even, steady. Not only was he translating it, he was explaining it. This paragraph outlines the exclusivity clause. It states that for 5 years after signing, both firms are forbidden from entering into a similar agreement. With competitors in the same region, gasps followed. Someone from legal had walked in and was now watching, eyes wide. Malik continued. "This section here," he pointed calmly, "mentions exceptions under maritime transport agreements due to recent EU regulation changes. That means the contract accounts for future legal shifts, which is rare." More people gathered. Laptops were closed. Coffee mugs were forgotten mid-sip. And Edward, he wasn't smiling anymore. BY page 3. A hush had fallen over the office floor. Edward tried to interrupt, but Malik didn't need his permission. He was speaking truth, and the room had decided to listen. BY page 5. One of the French-speaking legal advisors stepped forward. "This kid is legit," he whispered to a colleague. "He's translating faster and more clearly than our last 2 consultants." Malik paused halfway through page 6 and glanced up. "That's enough, I think," he said politely. "Unless you want the appendices too." No one laughed, and no one dared. Edward stood frozen, face flushed. His mouth opened, but no words came. He looked like a man who had just bet his house on a game he didn't understand, only to watch it slip through his fingers. That's when Malik, still composed, handed the file back and said something that would be whispered in that office for weeks. "My mom didn't raise me to make fun of people. She raised me to be better. You should try it sometime." The silence that followed was louder than Edward's laugh had ever been. Then, unexpectedly, the legal director, Miss Crawford, a sharp, respected woman, stepped forward. "What's your name?" she asked. "Malik," he said. "Malik how? Would you like a summer internship in our international law division?" Malik blinked. "Me?" She smiled. "Yes, you." Edward tried to interject, but she cut him off with a single glance. Later that night, Janice found her son waiting in the lobby as always. But this time, he had a strange, almost shy smile on his face. When she asked him what happened, he simply shrugged. "Nothing much," he said. "Just translated something for someone." But upstairs, an entire office had witnessed something rare. Real talent wrapped in humility. And Edward? He never made another joke about broom closets again. Malik's voice didn't shake. He stood tall, shoulders relaxed, eyes locked on the page as he translated the complex legal French into perfect English. Not a stammer, not a pause. Word by Word, clause by clause, he delivered it with the poise of someone far beyond his years. But it wasn't just the accuracy that left jaws dropping. It was what happened next. Malik paused midway through the fourth page. His brow furrowed slightly as he read a paragraph over again, slower this time. Then he looked up. This clause is incorrect, he said, matter-of-factly. It contradicts Article 1134 of the French Civil Code. The room froze. Nobody moved. For a long second, even Edward blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. That a junior associate, seated just a few desks away, quickly opened their laptop and pulled up the contract. Their fingers typed rapidly, scanning the paragraph Malik had referenced. Wait. The associate murmured, eyes narrowing. That a few others crowded around, leaning in to see. Malik calmly explained, the clause assumes unilateral termination without compensation in a joint venture. But under French law, particularly with partnerships like this, that would require mutual consent or indemnity unless explicitly stated. The associate gasped. He's right. Whispers swept through the room. Another employee, part of the legal department, jumped in. That error was in the original draft. We missed it. If we'd submitted that version for review, and it was executed as is, it could have opened us up to litigation. The word hit the room like a thunderclap. Litigation, millions of dollars. Potential lawsuits. Delayed mergers. Embarrassment on an international scale. All avoided. Because a 15-year-old boy caught what a room full of adults hadn't. For a few long seconds, the entire office was utterly silent. Edward's confident smirk was gone. His mouth hung open, struggling to form a response. But no witty remark came this time. No laugh. No mockery. He looked like a man who had just stepped into a trap of his own making and realized far too late that everyone was watching. Then, from the back of the room, someone clapped. That it was soft, slow, but others joined at a second clap, a third, and then, as if a dam had broken, the entire room erupted in applause. People stood from their desks. Even some of the executives who had come to see what the commotion was about found themselves clapping along, stunned by what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just impressive. This was extraordinary. Edward, now red-faced and breathing heavily, stood frozen, his ego bruised, his authority shattered. With no comeback and nowhere to hide, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, his expensive leather shoes squeaking slightly as he disappeared down the hall. Malik simply lowered the document and handed it back to the stunned associate beside him. Sorry if I overstepped, he said quietly to Ms. Crawford, the legal director, stepped forward again, shaking her head. Overstepped? Malik, you just saved this company from a potential international disaster. That wasn't overstepping. That was brilliance. Someone nearby added, and all while being mocked in front of everyone. Malik shrugged, his voice still calm. My mom says never let someone else's ignorance make you smaller. The room went quiet again. This time, not from shock, but respect. It was in that moment that Janice, having finished cleaning the conference rooms upstairs, walked into the lobby looking for her son. She found him surrounded by executives and employees, all smiling, clapping, and asking his name again. She blinked, unsure of what she was seeing. Malik, she asked gently. He turned with a grin. Hey, Mom. Ms. Crawford walked over, offering her hand to Janice. You must be his mother. I just want to say, your son is extraordinary. Janice, flustered and confused, took her hand. I thank you. Malik stepped beside her and whispered, I'll explain on the way home. That night, as they walked together under the city lights, Janice held her son's hand a little tighter. She'd always known he was brilliant, but now, the whole world had seen it too. And somewhere, alone in his office, Edward Langston sat with his door closed, his arrogance no longer enough to cover the sound of a teenager's voice echoing through the building. Correct, fluent, and unforgettable. Later that evening, after most of the office had emptied out and the city lights shimmered through the windows, Janice and Malik were escorted to the top floor. The executive suite was a world apart from the rest of the building. Polished wood floors, leather chairs, abstract art on the walls. The kind of place Janice had only seen while emptying trash bins or wiping down tables late at night. But tonight, she wasn't there to clean. Tonight, she was a guest, the CEO of the company, Richard Alcott, a sharp, silver-haired man with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard, stood as they entered. He walked around his desk and extended his hand with a warm smile. Janice. Malik, I'm glad you came up. Janice looked slightly overwhelmed, unsure whether to sit or stand. She shook his hand politely. Malik followed, doing the same. I hear your son saved our necks today, the CEO said, gesturing for them to sit. And I also hear he speaks, what was it? 3 languages. Janice nodded, her voice soft but proud. Yes, sir. Malik's always been gifted. He taught himself French, Spanish, and Japanese through library books and free online resources. Alcott's eyebrows lifted. No tutors? No, sir, Janice replied. Couldn't afford them. I was working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. He knew that, so he found his own way. Malik added, my mom gave up everything to take care of me. I couldn't sit around waiting for chances to come. If I couldn't pay for education, I figured I'd earn it myself. The room was quiet for a moment. Alcott leaned back, studying the boy in front of him. Most people in this building wouldn't have caught the mistake you did. And you're 15. Yes, sir. The CEO stood and walked to the large window behind his desk, hands in his pockets, clearly thinking. Do you know what the Marseille merger is worth? He asked, turning slightly. Malik shook his head. Over $90 million. If your correction had gone unnoticed, we could have faced international penalties, lawsuits, and a broken deal. Your sharp eyes didn't just impress a few employees, you saved the firm's most important deal of the year. Janice looked over at Malik, tears silently building in her eyes. Alcott turned to face them fully. I've run this company for 17 years, he said, and I've hired Ivy League lawyers who missed what you caught in minutes. That kind of brilliance deserves more than applause. He walked forward and extended his hand to Malik again. How would you like a full scholarship? Malik blinked. What? A full academic scholarship, Alcott said. Wherever you choose to go, we'll fund it. Tuition, books, housing, everything. Janice gasped, covering her mouth. But the CEO wasn't finished. And a paid internship with our legal and international business teams, he continued. Starting now, a few hours a week, just to get your feet wet. Learn the ropes. We'll assign you a mentor. You deserve more than just recognition. You deserve opportunity. Malik was speechless. For the first time that day, he didn't know what to say. He looked to his mother. Janice, wiping tears, nodded. Say yes, baby. Malik turned to the CEO and extended his hand. Yes, sir. Thank you. Alcott grinned. Good. We'll have HR draw up everything tomorrow. And Janice. She looked up quickly. From this day forward, you're not working nights anymore. We're promoting you to day staff, overseeing facilities. Better hours. Better pay. You deserve that. Janice shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take a Saturday off, Alcott said with a chuckle. You've earned it. That night, as Malik and Janice rode the elevator down from the top floor, neither said much at first, but as they stepped into the warm night air, Malik looked at her and said, I didn't do this alone. She smiled and wrapped her arm around his shoulder. No, baby, but you made them listen. And high above them, in a glass tower that once ignored them both, a story had already begun to spread. The cleaning lady's son who didn't just earn respect. He changed the game. Malik took the internship that he showed up early, stayed late, and soaked up every lesson like a sponge. While other interns scrambled to impress with charm and flashy presentations, Malik let his work speak for itself. Clear, precise, and always exceptional, he finished high school with honors, graduating at the top of his class. His story had already started to gain attention, and with strong recommendation letters and a reputation that preceded him, he was accepted into one of the top business schools in the country. Full scholarship. Full ride. It was a dream come true, not just for Malik, but for Janice too, and no more juggling shifts. No more silent tears after exhausting nights. She finally got to rest, finally saw her son step into a future they both had fought for in their own quiet ways. Years passed. Malik traveled abroad, mastered more languages, and earned degrees not just in international business, but also law. But he never forgot where he came from. He still called home every weekend. Still used a second-hand laptop longer than he needed to. Still thanked every security guard and cleaning staff by name. And then, One crisp morning, he walked through the revolving glass doors of that same office tower where everything had begun, not as a cleaner's son, not as an intern, but as a multilingual legal consultant representing international clients. On billion-dollar contracts, his name was now on the directory beside corner office doors. Executives greeted him with respect. Young interns whispered his story with admiration, but Malik, he stayed the same. Humble, grounded, focused. He started mentoring other kids from low-income families, teaching them languages, helping them with college applications, showing them how to navigate a world that often ignored them. As for Edward Langston, after multiple complaints from colleagues and a long string of declining performance reviews, he was quietly let go. No dramatic firing, no headlines, just a resignation email, a cleared desk, and a legacy that faded faster than his last bonus. Turns out, confidence without character doesn't last long. And Malik? He never gloated, he never spoke badly about Edward. Not even when others would have justified it. He simply kept working, kept building, and kept lifting others with him. And Janice? She never had to clean another floor again. The company offered her a permanent management role in office operations, but she chose early retirement instead, with a comfortable pension, gifted by the board of directors who never forgot the son, who once corrected their million-dollar mistake. Now she spends her days gardening, learning how to cook meals from the countries her son visits, and smiling every time she sees his name in a headline or a magazine article. Because sometimes, the world underestimates the quiet ones, the ones who mop the floors, who walk home in silence, who teach themselves by night while the city sleeps. But all it takes is one moment, one challenge, one voice willing to stand tall in the face of arrogance, to turn a joke into justice. And that boy became a millionaire, not through shortcuts, not through luck, but through grit, grace, and genius. The same halls that once mocked him now echoed his footsteps in polished shoes. The same executives who once ignored him now paused to hear his opinion. And through it all, Malik remained the same, grounded, grateful, driven not by wealth, but by legacy, because true success isn't just about making it out, that it's about reaching back and pulling others up, too. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who come from humble beginnings, who walk with their heads down but their dreams held high. Malik's story is proof that brilliance needs no spotlight to shine. It just needs one moment to be seen. He turned mockery into motivation, ignorance into impact, and walked the same halls that once looked down on him. As a leader, a millionaire, and a symbol of what's possible when hard work meets hard. So if you've ever been doubted, if you've ever felt overlooked, remember, your moment is coming. And when it does, make it unforgettable. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers, then wins.